you can't treat people with disabilities, your most vulnerable people in your community, like some sort of tin of beans in a shelf. I mean, like you might get Asda at 10 pence, or you might get Tesco's for 15 pence, but you can't treat people like that.
With the implementation of a number of social policies in Scotland over the years, many thousands of individuals and their families have had the reassurance of receiving a range of services such as housing support, children's respite and home care services. These services have aimed to support people to have choice and control in their lives and are provided by a variety of statutory, voluntary and private providers. Many people have been involved from the outset in making the choice in provider and expected to have their service for as long as it was needed. Recently, however, there has been an increasing phenomenon in some local authority areas of retendering these services, particularly, although not exclusively, in the non-statutory sector, with the possibility that provider, staff and the way the service is run could change. We spoke to the people who are at the centre of this process, the service users and their families, to find out how they feel about retendering.
We had a meeting one day that was like just we're going to be retendering this project, but I would still have all my staff and that, they said, probably.
And I found out by my mum and dad, not the council, and I felt as if the council should have told us first.
I mean, you get the impression that if we hadn't been told about it by the staff here, that we wouldn't have known anything at all. I mean, you just feel that we'd all go on behind the scenes, and the first that we would know about it would be possibly when they were on the verge of completion of it. 2 years isn't very long in a tendering process, and you feel that we should have even had maybe some kind of letter or notification or something, but if we hadn't been told by the staff here, we wouldn't have known anything.
It doesn't make any sense. You have an agency that has fought for a tender, they've won it, and then they have to re-tender, so you have no stability either. So that's slightly worrying. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, because all you're doing is slowly removing any stability. So the individual is never, and the families never feel confident with what's happening, because it's always going to change.
This is a snapshot of one retender. Business was transferred as follows. Provider A transferred 35 staff to Provider C and 25 staff to Provider E. Provider E transferred 50 staff from Provider F. Provider B transferred an unspecified number of staff to Provider C. Transferred 25 transferred over 100 staff from unspecified number of staff from other providers. More than 200 staff changed employers in this one exercise.
You know, the funding is coming to an end, and I think anybody's automatic reaction is going to be, whoever's doing this, they're going to go for the cheapest option, which isn't necessarily the best one for either us or all of the young people that are involved in this.
It would take vigilance, and it would take people who are dedicated to saying, right, at the end of this initial process that we've not been through before, we're going to sit down and we're going to see what we can learn from it. And perhaps, you know, that can improve what we've done in the past. But I think they know themselves that they haven't communicated well enough with people. We've grown in terms of our relationship, Catherine's extended family relationship, and with the people who have been looking after Catherine. We have total confidence in them. They've been wonderful communicators. We didn't really see any point in changing the provider.
There's lots of problems with direct payments that they haven't considered in relation to somebody with Lundy's needs, and also the pressures it puts on families. They're not considering it at all, but then why should they? It's all about saving money.
This horrendous waiting game in terms of 2 providers, you're thinking of all the staff involved who are still wondering, where am I going to be working next month, and am I going to be with these people? And it's the sheer volume of things that are involved, as you know, in finding out. Even if Catherine was the only one that was transferring, you would be talking about hours discussing her caseload, finding out, meeting with her. And I just don't see how it's going to be done with the numbers that are involved.
Lindy's money's there for Lindy's care, and to prove if you pay a good rate of pay, you get good carers, and you get stability, and you get all the things that make her life as it ought to be.
The council was going to write to us and say, like, we're under retender and blah, blah, blah. But the ones I feel sorry for is my neighbours downstairs and my neighbour upstairs knew nothing. And I found out because I've actually got a mum and dad.
I haven't came across anywhere it's as good as this, and it would be terrible if the tender was to go out and then the service get cut, and again it would go back to who would we end up with, where would the kids be going, and just the quality, trust, continuity would be totally broken.
Other local councils have done a wonderful job in, you know, taking care into the community. On this one point, they're really, I don't think it's been looked at from the point of view of the people in their care.
You just hope that somebody somewhere along the line has common sense prevailing and thinks about, you know, keeping the status quo.
Why take that away from them? Because when it all comes down to it, we can speak up for ourselves, but every young person can't, and we've got to think of the young people in this.
You may not feel as confident about leaving them in a new situation, and I would feel that I would be right back where I started again.
If it's pencils, stationery, and you're applying for the tender, then that's fair enough. But when it's people with complex needs, I know it's a cliche, but you really can't put a value on love and care, and especially to the most vulnerable in our society.
But I actually find the whole thing unbearable now, and I work within it. But what's a competitive market? What my sister's care is part of this big marketplace, when actually what you want is somebody you trust to look after her well.
The word for the council is just be careful in future if you're going to be retendering, because if you're going to be retendering, make sure you discuss it with people with learning disabilities.
It was too much upset for myself and families, and I just hope we don't have to go through the same thing again.